3-second delay.
Yo, James, what's up, man?
Hello, Matt. How are you, sir?
Good, good. What's happening? So,
Oh, hang on. I got audio issues here. Hang on a second.
right on, no worries. Well, just, everybody, welcome to AdjusterTV Live. This is how we do it. It's just off the cuff, and it's like we're just stumbling around in the dark, tripping over our stuff that we left on the floor in the dark. Couple things before we get started. I want you guys to know that you can ask questions in the chat. Okay, James and I are going to kind of talk about a handful of things. Everything from James' first experience doing cat property claims, doing a cat property deployment this year, which this is going to be an interesting story, and we're going to kind of go deep on that. And then we're going to hit your questions, whatever questions you guys have. If you're watching this live, use the chat feature on YouTube on the left side. It's on the right side of the screen. If you're on mobile or whatever, it's probably below. And we'll kind of check those periodically to see what questions you guys have, and we'll hit those kind of later on. If we're not live, send a message from AdjusterTV.com/contact. That goes straight to my email, and I'll be able to answer your question directly. So first things first, though, I want you guys to know that we've got a few sponsors for this live stream, and I really, really, really want to thank them for partnering with AdjusterTV. And it's important for you to know that I'm not going to partner with sponsors if they don't provide something that I think is going to be useful for you in either starting a career or advancing your career. So when we mention them in here, please go show them some love, check out their websites, call them, email them, get in touch with them. And thank you very much for doing that. So first things we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with the sponsor, and that is CCMS and Associates. CCMS is a very fast-growing firm that has a number of innovative career opportunities for new and experienced adjusters, including commercial and residential property work, as well as dispute resolution. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically kind of a new opportunity for carriers and insureds to reach a fully agreed settlement before things like the appraisal process or even going to court. And it's kind of a new opportunity for independent adjusters to have a new sort of kind of a work thing that we can do, right? So I strongly recommend that you send your resume over to careers@ccmsclaims.com, and I'll show you this here. And you can, while you're watching this, you can open up a new tab, go to ccmsclaims.com. So, all right, James, let's get into this, brother. So, your first cat deployment. What you got?
Yes, sir. So my first cat. Well, so you want to talk my first property cat? Is that what?
Yeah. So your first property. I mean, you've been doing auto for over a year, a little over a year, right? You kind of got started with auto,
specialty equipment, RVs, semi trucks, all that other stuff. So my first opportunity to do property, I was to set it up a little bit. I was actually up in Iowa working the derecho up there, running around most of the state, all over the place, looking at specialty equipment, farm equipment, all that stuff. And I was watching what was going on in the Caribbean and the Gulf and everything. And I'm like going, I want to jump in on this. I want to get some of this action. To back up the story, a lot of you guys probably know that a year ago, I had an accident on a roof and injured my knee and had to have surgery. And that's kind of what drove me into auto for a while. So I went down. So I made myself available, had several companies calling me. Had one company that I'm very close to. They're like, dude, don't take any assignments. Just come to work for us. Boom. They called me, and it was an auto desk assignment. And I'm like, right up my alley. I can work from home. I've been gone for several months, and this was going to work out great. Well, our first day, our first day of deployment, they canceled the gig. It was over.
Of
And
course.
so like, well, what am I going to do now? Yeah, everybody, everybody's already been called. I've turned everybody else down. I'm picking up the phone, calling people, and everybody's like, well, we've already filled all our positions and we're done, and then lo and behold, I get a phone call. So it was Sunday. That was our first day. They shut everything down on Sunday afternoon, basically. And then Tuesday, I get the call that they want me to go to be in Lafayette. The first call was, hey, can you be in Birmingham and I probably just gave away who it was. Can you be in Birmingham on Sunday? And I'm like, yeah, I could be in Birmingham on Sunday. And then we hung up, and just a few minutes later, they called back and says, no, be in Lafayette on Wednesday. I'm sorry, not on Wednesday, but on Saturday is what they said. So I took off. I got everything ready. I was ready to go. I actually took off on Thursday, got down there early. They called. Matter of fact, what was the hilarious part is that it was on Tuesday they called. Wednesday morning, I received a phone call asking me, where are you? Why aren't you here? And I'm like, well, you guys said to be there on Saturday. So they had me down as being there on Wednesday, which was impossible for me to be there. So anyway, long story short, I head down there. They said, hey, if you can get here on Wednesday, get here on Wednesday. If you get here on Thursday, come in on Friday and we'll get you started. Arrived on location. I got down there on Thursday, had my RV with me, get the RV set up, head over to, on Friday morning, head over to the only address that I have. Okay. It's the only address they gave me. I head to that location. I'm walking around. I'm looking for the IA firm, but I see some people with State Farm shirts on, and I just totally didn't mean to give away who I was going to work for. It'll all work out. But anyway.
Too late, no worries.
Yeah, it's too late. So they said, go around the side of the building. We'll give you your equipment. So got and so what do I do now? I don't know what to do now. So I'm standing around and I'm asking people, they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, where am I supposed to be? They go, well, you need to call your IA firm. They're not here. They're not at this location. So I call, I start picking up the phone, calling people, and they're going, well, why'd you pick up your equipment? Nobody told you to do that. Why are you over there? I was like, well, it's the only address I have. So we went back and forth. They go, we'll call you back.
Chaos. Pure chaos.
Yeah. Hour and a half later, nobody calls me. Okay. And so I run into somebody and they told me where that IA firm was staying at and where they were meeting at. So I head over there. I get to that location. I run into the person who's supposed to be my manager, and she's like, well, what are you doing here? I was like, well, why didn't you call me back? And so basically I showed up for nothing, got all my equipment. They said, just come in tomorrow. So I'm like, okay. So, but I didn't know this. I was getting paid the whole time. So once they called me and locked me in, which this is the really nice thing. So, and I didn't know this. Nobody had told me about this. When they called me and asked me, hey, will you accept this assignment? And I accepted the assignment, and they sent me the email confirming it. I was on the payroll and I was getting paid. So that was a shock to me. So I ended up getting paid for basically 2 days that I wasn't even there. And actually 3 days I wasn't even. So my first check was
common,
a couple of days. Yeah. So but I didn't know. So that was a nice surprise. So anyway, I get there on Saturday morning. I show up where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to go through orientation, and the link that the carrier sent was not functioning. And so I couldn't do orientation to wait till Sunday. Now, remember, I've been there since Thursday. And so I'm just hanging around. I'm getting paid, doing nothing. And on Sunday morning, I just get online and I'm checking things out. And I found out that they have sent me 60 claims. And I'm like, 60 claims? What am I going to do with 60 claims? I barely can figure out how to use a computer at this
I'll tell
point.
you what happened. Yeah. James started calling me, dude, what do I do? So, and just for everybody's like kind of their understanding, what he's describing, and as he continues to describe this whole process, this is pretty typical for major cat, especially if you have a couple of quiet years and like there aren't as many IAs like that are like ready to go. And there aren't as many like IA firm cat team people that are as ready to go. You're going to have a lot of chaos. You're going to have a lot of, we told you to go 600 miles over there, Well, no, you didn't. you know, and then they'll also do this thing what he was talking about where you'll show up, they want you there on site, and they'll just start giving you money, right? They'll start paying you per diem, or not per diem, but like a day rate fee just to be there. Or they may, you know, and they may even, you know, I don't know if you had this opportunity or had this conversation, but they may offer even an advance. If they're like, you're able to pay your hotel, you know, whatever, they might offer you an advance. Like when I was, my very first few storms, I got advances. But it's total chaos, and it goes downhill from here.
So yeah, it went majorly downhill. So I get these claims. I finally do my orientation, and so I know what I have to do next. And what I have to do next is I have to organize all my files, and I've got to figure out where everything's at, and I've got to start scheduling myself. And so what I did is I just took every claim that I had. I looked at where they were at, and I put them in my calendar how I wanted to schedule them, and that's how I did it. And then on Monday, I kind of isolated myself in my RV, and I just picked up the phone, and I worked pretty late on Sunday night, but Monday I think I was up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I don't think I went to bed until 2 o'clock in the morning. On Tuesday morning. And they were telling me, you know, and so the IA firm was said, look, don't get in a hurry. Don't even make your first appointment until Wednesday or Thursday. So, you know, here it is. I've got my claims on Sunday, and they're telling me not even do my first appointment until Wednesday or Thursday. So I set my first ones up for Wednesday, but which was a good thing because I'd stayed up so late on Monday, I was dead on Tuesday. And then Tuesday, it was just more of going into the help center. They were having some little mini classes and seminars about things, and I was still lost. And of course, the carrier system that's the Achilles heel right there. I mean, I was very confident. I mean, I'd scoped houses before. I'd used Xactimate. I was confident in everything I could do. I didn't think I was going to have any issues there, but when it came to the carrier system, that was the issue. That was the problem. It was all the procedures they wanted you to do, how they wanted you to say things. Don't say too much. Say too much. It was just how they wanted this process done. And not to mention that is that once you put everything into the carrier system, you had to go to the IA firm system. You had to document it over there. So everything you did like 2 or 3 times. And I'm Mr. Right now. I don't like doing a lot of things. I just want to get something done and move on. And to have to sit there and do all these steps and procedures was just not very pleasant for me. And some people thrive in that environment. That's just not me. But so anyway, we finally get out, and we get our first claims, and we go out and look at them. And my first 2 that I looked at were not that bad. Pretty simple. Plus that calling people, which was really great, was some people rescinded their claims. The great thing about somebody that rescinded their claim and is canceling their claim is that you get credit for closing a claim. So I'm looking like a hero. I'm there on the first day after I get claims, and I'm already closing them. So I'm already looking like a stud. I'm kicking ass. You know, I'm doing great. So, but that was the only time I was ahead, was at that moment that I had those 2 claims that were canceled, because I went out, started scoping, came back in, try to get things set up the way that they want when you set your tree up or set up your file in Xactimate. Everybody wants it done differently. And so I was having to learn how they wanted it done. And what you'll find out when you go to these big events, I found out very quickly is that every manager that you talk to has a different answer.
Yeah.
You can walk in and talk to, it's just like, when you go out and you scope a house and you do an estimate. I mean, you can have 5 different adjusters look at a house and come up with 5 different estimates. It's the same way when you go into one of these help centers, when you ask them, how should I do this? How should I approach this? Every single one you'd approach would have a different answer. Okay. Somebody would say something to you and it didn't make sense. You go to another one and he's got a different answer.
Right.
And
So
now
key
you're
there,
And
the key there, I mean, and you can't go shopping, your question around until you get the answer you want. If you get the answer you want, though, you put that manager's name in the file, so that when when it gets kicked back or the file reviewer sees it, and it's like, what in the world is this? And they send it to us, they send it escalated or whatever. Then the next person that looks in the file is going to see, discuss this issue, blah, 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 with manager Mr. Jeff Smith or, Jane Doe or whatever it is, right? For their phone number, put everything, everything you can, put their email address in there so that covers your rear end. Because it's not like you just did it on your own. You got somebody to sign off on it. And chances are the person that looks at that says, all right, well, if Jeff's going to take the fall on this one, send it through, right? So always put a manager's name. Anytime you talk to a manager to get a decision on something, put their name in the file for sure, 100%.
And I learned that early on. And for me, I wasn't answer shopping.
No, not saying you were,
sit
but
there
just in
and explain
general.
things to you. Yeah, but what happened is they would explain something to you, and you wouldn't understand what they were telling you because they're just really fast at it. Because remember, these guys have been doing it forever, and so they're automatically thinking that you're going to understand what they're saying. But they're speaking Spanish, and you're speaking Portuguese, and you may understand a few words, but it's just not translating very well. And so, anyway, one person will tell you something, and what I found out is that one manager will say something to you that you don't understand, and then you go talk to another manager, and they tell you the exact same thing, but they tell it to you in a different way that it'll click with you. And once you find that manager that talks to you in your language, that's who you stick with. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That doesn't mean that every time you talk to them that it's going to be perfect, but you're going to make progress. Because I was there for I don't know how many days, and finally there was one guy that came in, and he was actually a little late to the party. He comes in, sits down with me, he explained something to me, and everything clicked. And at that point, I was probably, I don't know how many days in I was, but I was probably 7 claims behind at that point. And he said something that just clicked with me, and I closed, I think it was 5 claims that day. And I just got caught up real fast. And that was, that was a big relief, because you have all this pressure, because you're thinking, I went into this thing going, okay, I'm James Mathis. I can do anything, and I'm going to just totally rock this thing. And I got there, and I found out that I really didn't know anything. I mean, when it came to the nuts and bolts of, scoping a house, making my notes, doing my scope sheets, and actually writing the claim, I was pretty good. I mean, when it came to Xactimate, my Xactimate skills weren't the best, but they were functional. But the problem was when you had to sit there and do it the way that the carrier wanted it, and you realize that, you learn a lot. You go through all this training, and you find out that, and I'll just give you an example. I already let the cat out of the bag that it was State Farm, but with State Farm, a swimming pool or swimming pool deck on every other policy in the world is Schedule B. Okay, but State Farm is Schedule A. And so that was my first mistake that I
Coverage
made. Coverage A. Coverage A. And that got, and my first one was kicked back because I put a structure on the wrong.
So so State Farm wants it to be part of the dwelling?
It's dwelling, correct. Their dwelling extension is still A.
So if it wasn't connected to the house even?
If it wasn't connected to the house, it was still A.
Yeah, and that's probably, it could be even a state thing. I mean, if you went to Minnesota, it might have been totally different.
Right. And then B was personal property, and C was loss of use.
Right.
I believe that's the way it went with them. So I'll have to refresh it again. I've been away for a month. I tried to forget as much as possible.
It just falls straight out.
That's right. So, but that was the big thing is that, and I've told everybody since then that when everybody's asking me, I'm heading that way, what should I do? What advice do you have? And I tell everybody, go in with low expectations. Go in with low expectations for yourself, go in with low expectations for the IA firm that you're working with. And if you go in with that attitude, you're going to be okay. I mean, and it's not being negative at all. It's just not setting yourself up for failure. It's actually setting yourself up for success. I mean, you can still be positive in that environment, but it's not as easy. It's organized chaos is kind of what it is. And sometimes you think there's no organization whatsoever, but
disorganized chaos.
It works out. Yeah, it was fun. I'm glad I went. I would definitely consider doing it again. So what happened to me, after a couple of weeks, I worked 10 days, no problems, was running around on the roof, climbing up and down ladders. And then one day I was on the roof, I was coming down the incline, and all of a sudden my knee starts hurting, and it hurt pretty bad. It was kind of difficult to get on the ladder and get down. I had another inspection after that. I finished that one up. Get up the next day, I knock out 3 inspections, and my knee's just killing me. It's swollen huge, and so I had to get off the roof. And so they opened up a workers' comp claim and told me to go see a doctor. And basically, what it boiled down to is I just have arthritis in my knee because I'm old, and there's nothing we could do about it. And so what I ended up doing in the meantime was they put me on. Technically, I was light duty, but at this point, you had people that were leaving. They couldn't handle the pressure. They couldn't handle the work. They were falling way behind, and they just left. And so now you have claims. Some of these claims had been scoped. We had photos for them. And so I had to organize those claims and either write the estimate on it or kick it back and say it needs to be re-inspected, or it hasn't been inspected, goes to somebody else. And so that's how I spent my last 2.5 weeks down there, was fixing everybody else's abandoned claims. And you will learn a lot when you're working other people's claims. You will also learn that it will make you better at what you do, because then you realize, hey, I need to be better. I need to take better notes. I need to take better photos, because what if something happens to me and somebody else gets this file? And it was a big awakening, and there was things that, you're just having to guess at. But also what I found out is, and it was after I figured it out, then somebody says it. When you're writing an estimate and you have something that's kind of borderline and you're not really sure what direction to go with it, just explain it. And the one thing that you always hear is, if you're going to make a mistake that benefits the policyholder, not the insurance company, not the carrier.
Yeah, for sure.
And just put it in your notes as to why you did it that way. So the saying is not what you pay, it's what you say. That stuck in my brain. So if I had a situation that was difficult, I would just pay it, and I would just explain as to the reason why I paid it the way I paid it. And it worked out, and nothing got kicked back to me. I think while I was there, the 60 something claims that I wrote while I was there, I think only 3 were sent back to me for very minor revisions. One was like I said, I had a fence that I put on the wrong coverage, and I forgot there was 1 or 2 other minor ones that happened as well. So, because I explained it, and that was it. And then the TM would send me back notes that said, "Hey, way to go! Thanks for explaining that." Or hey, in the future, go ahead and pay it. Go ahead and pay the claim, but go make this change to it, and then we're good. You don't have to resubmit anything. So, that was a big relief. So, be nice. Listen, and that's the thing. Be nice to everybody.
Be nice to everybody. Document your file. I kind of hammer this in a lot of the stuff that I put out. Good photos that are in order. I've done file review a lot. I've done a lot of re-inspections. I've done a lot of this kind of like cleanup work. Like James was talking about, if you're a brand new like property adjuster and they want you to stay back and do cleanup like that, it's a good sign that you did something right. But you have to kind of like James was kind of talking about it a minute ago, you kind of have to think about the fact that this is documentation for a claim that could be discoverable in court, right? And also, the things are going to come up on claims later on, whether they're legit or, like something was missed or something new made itself apparent, or that the contractor's fishing for trying to get a supplement that he may or may not deserve, right? The desk adjuster who gets that file downstream from you is going to need to be able to quickly look through your file and have that file tell the story of what happened on the claim and what the next steps were, right? Where was the claim left? How was the insured left, right? Were they left with a check in their hand and a copy of the estimate and an explanation that, once you get the work done, you'll get the second payment, or is there just trail off and there's nothing there? The person who reads the activity diary that says, I don't see anything where it says that the adjuster explained this to the insured. Or they're looking through the photos and they see 5,000 snapshots of different angles of the same hail dent on a downspout, which I have no idea what the deal is with gutters and downspouts and adjusters, but they just got to take a million pictures of them. You don't need a million pictures of them. Just tell the story, right? If I'm doing a file review, I may be file reviewing 40 to 100 claims a day, right? And I got to get through those fast, right? So I want to be sure you have all the photos that you need, and I don't want to have to look through all 65 extra photos or 165 extra photos, because you put those all in there because you're like, well, I'm not sure exactly what to put in there, but just to cover my rear end, I'm going to put them all in. They don't have labels. I'm going to look and see your name and find a picture of you and put it on the wall and start throwing darts at it, right? Because that's how much extra work you're going to cause me as a file reviewer or a desk adjuster if you don't just properly document your file, explain what you did, if it's pushing into the gray area, right? If it's deviating a little bit from the estimating guidelines, which State Farm, all the major carriers that I know of have like really specific estimating guidelines, and they're going to give you when you show up on site or when you do their certifications. Some of the smaller carriers may be like, yeah, just, you have to call them and ask or send them an email. But if you deviate from those estimating guidelines in any way for any reason, you have to explain why, right? If you just do it because you think that the insured deserves an extra 200 square feet of paint or whatever it is, without explaining why you did that, then it's going to get sent back to you, guaranteed. So
one of the things and that was one thing that you would have to explain as well, is because with Xactimate, with the new X1, it will kind of check some of the things that you do, and it will say, hey, why did you do this way? And it
right.
kind of does
audit violations
QC for you. Yep. And
yep.
So it helps you a lot. And like, one of those things is, you've got a water stain, you picture framed it, well, why you have this extra coat of paint, and you just have to explain picture frame, and then
right. So
move on.
Xactimate will kind of cover your rear end a little bit. If you say, for example, and this is kind of a common error, especially if you're not using a macro that is you've put together, using macros can really help reduce errors, because everything's in there that you might need, and all you got to do is go through and delete out the stuff that you don't want on that roof, for example. But for example, if you have the tear off 25 squares, for example, of 3-tab shingles, and then your next line item is replace 25 shingles or 25 squares of 3-tab shingles, it's going to kick off an audit violation in Xactimate, and before you can close the claim or move on to kind of escalate or move the claim to the next step, it'll post up a big, if you guys, any of you, for those of you who've used Xactimate at all, you've probably seen this. For those of you who haven't yet, it'll pop up a big message thing that will list all the little violations like that. It'll say the amount of shingles is not accounting for waste or something like that. Please correct this violation before you can finish the claim or do whatever, right? So kind of covers your rear end, and I think the carriers are able to build in some of that stuff in their carrier profile versions of Xactimate. So when you work at Liberty Mutual Storm, you're going to have to use the Liberty Mutual profile, which will have the model opening statement, their headers, and all this stuff in it. You go work for State Farm, you have to use the State Farm profile, right? So they're kind of customized a little bit for the different carriers. But again, I mean, you should have access to, especially with the big carriers, they're going to have a link to a website that has a 10,000 mile long page on it, which has got every possible, drywall, how to handle texture on drywall, how to handle openings for siding and paint, how to do this, how to do that, right? Or there's a PDF that comes in a great big zipped folder that you're going to get when you first show up, or when you do your certifications, they'll give you all that information as well. So, would you guys like to hear about my first CAT deployment?
No.
Okay,
I've
then I
heard
won't
it.
talk about it.
So, good. No,
actually,
yes, we would. I'm sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
I'm going to tell you guys about it. I mean, it's as stressful. It's been a little bit, so it's kind of like it's hazy in the sands of time, but it's still. I think kind of the core lessons are the same. Before I go into that, I want to hit on another one of our sponsors, and that is CPLIC. So do you guys know what E&O insurance is? Do you know what general liability insurance is? And if you are a claims professional, especially if you're an independent adjuster, and even more so if you're a 1099 or you work directly for a carrier, which there are some gigs out there like that, you've got to have E&O and general liability to cover yourself, right? So if you go to, let me get this up here real quick. This is a very professional workflow we've got going on. Go to cplic.net/AdjusterTV. I've got a download with a free guide that explains some of the most common, the different types of insurance that you need to consider as an independent claims professional. Things like commercial auto, right? So I've had commercial auto insurance as an adjuster for 20 years. So head over to cplic.net/AdjusterTV and download that guide. It's totally free. You just have to put your email address in, but it's worth it to check into those guys because that company does E&O specifically for us. It's not like Hiscox, which is one of the competitors that does a whole bunch of different kinds of insurances for a whole bunch of different kinds of people and a whole bunch of different industries. This is specifically only for us. There's no PAs in there. There's no attorneys. It's just adjusters. So check them out.
Just us.
Just us. So, okay, so my first CAT deployment. So in 1998, back in the 20th century, I had a bunch of roommates, right? And my sister's boyfriend heard about this gig, this insurance claims thing. And a lot of you guys probably have a similar story where you heard about it from somebody, and they're like, yeah, man, this guy we know, he goes out and he spends the whole summer in doing these hailstorm things, and then he comes home and he's got $75,000 in his checking account, and then he just plays gigs all winter long, and works on his recording career, whatever it was, And I was like, I'd like to do that, but it's insurance, right? And I have a degree in broadcasting, right? And so I was like, at the time, I was actually working at the Food Network as an associate producer, and I was like, there's no way I'm giving up this cool job. Working in Hollywood, or not, I wasn't in Hollywood, I was in Los Angeles down on Wilshire Boulevard, and, cooking shows, we did stuff for HGTV and DIY, and I got to meet the host, and one of my bosses was used to be the executive producer of the Jenny Jones show, and all. So it was like you're in the industry, right? Last thing in the world I wanted to do was insurance. It's like, that sounds awful, but insurance pays a lot better than TV does, at least at the level I was at. So, went back and forth on it, and finally I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So signed up for Vail Training Solutions is what that's called now. Back then they called it Vail National. I think Sedgwick bought them. And went to their 3-week residential training class in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in Mechanicsville. And very comprehensive. Got my hands on Xactimate. They had the whole house set up in the warehouse that you could climb on the roof and do, like everybody's got. And then that was in, I think that was in April or May of 1999. And then I was going for my State Farm certification because that's what apparently you do even 20 years ago, and failed it the first time I took it. I took the certification test, and this was right after Hurricane Floyd hit, and so I couldn't go, right? And back then, we barely had the internet, so I didn't know that I could just go with somebody else. So I was like, I guess I missed it. And my sister's boyfriend and his 2 brothers, they all went to Floyd, right? So they had a storm under their belt, and they were there for about a month. And then I didn't actually work until the following May, so it was a year from the time I got trained. And I retested for a State Farm certification and got it. And there was a huge hailstorm, which I think is still, if it's not the top one, it's one of the top 3 most expensive hailstorms in history in north suburbs of Chicago in May of 2000. And the guys that went to Floyd that I didn't get to go with were they called me and they're like, Matt, there's a huge hailstorm in Chicago, man. You got to go. I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm still working at Food Network. I guess, I don't think so. And then I'm like sitting there looking I had some like debt from being a dummy when I was in college, and not very much, but enough to where it was a big pain in my butt and it was going to take me a while to pay it off. And I was like, I'm still making $15 an hour, living in Los Angeles with 5 roommates. You know what? Let's do it. So I quit at Food TV, which was very, very hard to do because they didn't really appreciate that, me giving them 1 hour notice. And I called, well, I tell you what, actually, I didn't quit. I called Pilot because they were like, call Pilot. So I called Pilot, and they were like, well, and I begged. I was like, they were like, well, no, I think we're okay. And I was like, are you sure? I mean, I'm ready to go. I've got all my this, I got my that. Okay. Well, State Farm is known for taking on new adjusters, and I think it's one of the requirements that they have to have at least 1 or 2 brand new adjusters on every cat that they do, right? Because they're kind of trying to refresh the pool. So she's like, okay, I'll put you on this storm. You got to be there in 48 hours. And I was in Los Angeles, and so I drove to Chicago. I quit with 1 hour notice and drove to Chicago. And I stopped once for 4 hours and took a nap. And man, I rolled into the storm office in, I can't remember the name of the little town. There's so many, it was real close to O'Hare. Anyway, I rolled in there at like 10 o'clock in the morning. I'd been driving all night long, and I was wearing a Hawaiian shirt. Why? I have no idea. And like board shorts and flip-flops. And I like pushed the doors open and walked into the State Farm office, like this, had my bag on with my laptop. And it was like a hum of activity in there. And as soon as like the doors opened up, it just was like, it went dead silent. And you could hear a pin drop, and all these heads turned and looked, and everybody's wearing a red golf shirt and khaki pants, right? Kyle or Jake or whatever from State Farm. And they all looked at me like, and their eyes all got really big like this. And I was like, and I saw this guy, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he was like, I don't know if he's still doing this anyway, but he was like the boss of the storm on the Pilot side. And I never saw him smile ever. And he saw me. He was talking to somebody, like leaned down talking, and he looked up and saw me, and he got a big scowl and did this. And like I was like, okay, and I like followed him and went into an office, and he just chewed me up one side and chewed me down the other side after asking me who the heck I was. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm with Pilot, they told me to come, da 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 da. And he said, you are never, ever, ever to come into the office again without khakis and a storm shirt. The storm shirts and your supplies and everything are on the second floor in room 201. Get your butt up there right now, and then we're going to start giving you claims, and away you go, right? And so this was the year 2000, back before modern computing. So they handed me a pile of paper file jackets, right? And it's got the insured's name on it, and their address, and their policy number, and all their coverages and everything. And you open it up, and there's nothing in it, right? And so you have to fill that thing with all these pieces of paper, right? So they give you the activity diary, which you staple to the back, the inside of the back of it, and you write down, Monday, May 32nd at 13 o'clock, contacted Mr. John Smith, right? And then so you have to do everything that way, and then once you do your scope and write your estimate and your photos and everything, those all go on paper and they go into this file, and then you bring the file back in and you put it into your manager's basket, right? And then you look in your basket, and there'll be more claims there. And when you're first starting out, of course, it's full of kicked back claims. So it's got some new claims and a bunch of kicked back ones that you got to make corrections. And the managers, they have the red pen, State Farm red pen, which I guess they don't do anymore because of computers. But they'll check everything off in there, and they write huge notes in the margins, and yeah. So my manager, who I actually ran into at NACA a couple of years ago, I hadn't seen him or talked to him for like a good 17 years. And the man hadn't aged a day and was wearing the same, maybe where I got the idea for the vest thing, because he was wearing like a vest, and he was like, pleated slacks and like in really good shape and like perfectly coiffed hair. But he was a hard ass, and he rode my butt. He would call me at 5:45 in the morning, and because they have to track their numbers, right? As managers, they got to say, how many of you looked at, how many of you closed, right? How many of you contacted, and they have to track all that stuff. He would call me every single morning. Matthew, I need to know, I need your contacted to inspected sheet, right? So this is something that you fax in every night or every morning. I mean, and you want to talk about like State Farm, compliance stuff. It was the same back then, right? So they had all like a sticky sheet with barcodes on it. Every claim had this, and you take your barcode off, and you put it here, and you put it on this sheet, and you put it on that sheet. You fax this to this person. When you print your estimate, you got to print 3 copies of the estimate, 1 for the file, 1 for the agent, and 1 for the insured. And you wrote checks. I don't know if you guys did. You guys write checks in James?
Yeah, we could write checks. And
Yeah.
actually, they give you a mobile printer because they want you to print them and then sign them.
Yeah, so we had a check register and a checkbook and the whole 9 yards, and it was a lot to take in. And they didn't teach any of that in the very beginning at Vail Training Solutions. They just taught you Xactimate and like here's how you scope, and maybe like a few policy things, right? So no adjuster training, honestly, that I've ever been in, teaches you like what it's really like to be on a CAT, right? Except for.
Yeah.
Except for veteran adjusting in school. That whole thing, that's a 6-week simulation, and they do all this stuff with you, but they're really the only ones that I can think of. So I almost got kicked off the storm because I was going out and scoping, and this is like the key thing that I learned from this to kind of add to what James was talking about, and that is that I went and scoped every day, all day, every day, went and scoped and scoped and scoped. And then I was like kind of trying to like write estimates and sort of like kind of half-assing it a lot, and wasn't getting any claims close. Like in the very beginning, they said they pair you up with an RT, a re-inspector trainer, which I probably did for you, James, I imagine.
Nope.
Oh, you didn't get that?
Everybody go out. Nope.
So they may not have had the resources for it, or maybe they're not doing it anymore.
Well, no, there's an interesting story because I have a State Farm alias that I've had for many years. And so because my State Farm alias is such a low number, because it's many years old, they automatically, when I came in, the reason why I received 60 claims right off the bat, because they thought I was experienced.
Yeah.
And so that's why they dumped
You
all
sound
this stuff on
experienced.
me.
You look experienced.
Oh, it's good looks and personality.
You walked in looking like a pro, and they said, give that man 60 claims.
Yeah, and I was ahead of the curve. I mean, I'm going to brag on myself just a little bit, because even though I was stressed out about being 7 claims behind at one point, the managers are going, 7 claims, dude, you're great. We got people that are 21 claims behind. They had people that were so far in the weeds. And they go, you're doing fantastic. I'm like going, well, how do I feel like? I feel like I'm sucking at this. And they go, oh, you're doing great. So, again, low expectations, man. You'll make it.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of the moral of the story for my whole CAT deployment thing is that basically my manager called me into the office this was probably 3 weeks in, because the first 2 weeks I was out with RTs. End of the third week, I didn't have anything more close than what I had done with those RTs who were training me to do the State Farm process in the field. He's like, listen, he called me in the office. He said, cancel all your appointments today and bring all your files in. Every single file that you have in hand, Matt, bring it in now. We're going to do an open file review. And this will determine whether you he was a little bit dramatic. He's like, and this will determine whether you stay or go. He was from New Jersey, so he had kind of an accent. So I brought all my files in, and we went through them, open file review, and we were like, made notes on each one. This one needs this. All you have to do, Matt, is these 3 things, and you can close this claim. This one needs this one needs this. And we went through my whole thing, and I spent the whole rest of the day closing every single open claim that I had, and I got it done by the end of the day, which, this was the most stressful thing I had ever experienced. I had a twitch, had an abscess tooth the whole trip, so I was like eating Advil all day long every day. I was really overweight at the time, and it was summertime in Chicago, so it was super humid. I mean, it was like every possible miserable thing. If I was doing that claim or that storm for my second storm, it would have been a piece of cake, right? I mean, it wouldn't, maybe not a piece of cake, but it would have been way infinitely easier, because it's like you said, right, James, you get that one guy or that one gal or that manager or whoever it is to explain it something in a way that clicks to you, or you push it to the point where like, okay, I literally have to do this, or I'm going to not be able to make all this money that I'm looking at right here. Every claim in my pile was money, right? It kind of focuses your efforts, right? So once that clicks, once you get that first claim closed, this is kind of a big deal. And I think for a lot of new adjusters, when you get that one first claim closed, the second one's easier, right? The third one's a lot easier because you're working through the process, right? It's not the scoping, it's not the estimating, the Xactimate stuff, or building things in Sketch. It's working through that process, right? And State Farm probably has the hardest process, or the most complicated. Allstate and them probably
You have to complete 51 different tasks before you can close a claim.
Yeah. So once you complete all 51 of those tasks once, then you're like, okay, I've seen the process all the way through. It's like, driving to a new place that's 3 hours away. The second time you drive to that place, you don't need to use the map maybe a couple of times instead of like having to stare at it the whole time. The fifth time you go to that place 3 hours away, you know the way. You don't have to look at the map anymore, right? So that's how you get faster at doing claims, which is why I always tell everybody, scope the very first day out, scope one, and close that one that same day, right? Even if you don't, I would say do that for the first 3 days, but even if you try to ramp up and do 2 or 3, make sure that you only scope what you can close reasonably that very same day that you scope that loss, and you will never get in trouble. You may have your managers be like, your production, how many are you doing a day? They'll ask you, oh, I'm doing, 3 a day, and it's like you're at 9 days into the storm. They might give you a little bit of grief about that, but I can promise you, you're the only adjuster, the only new adjuster who has any closed claims, right? Which is the only thing that matters. The only thing that matters. They want those claims closed, right?
That's what keeps you hanging around, and that's what helped me out was I closed claims early. And because I was closing claims, when my knee bothered me, that was why they kept me around versus just saying, get out of here.
Yeah. All right. So we got a good question from Joel. And let me scroll back up here. He asks a question about like-kind quality, or LKQ. Let's see if I can pop this up on the screen. There we go. It says non-matching state. Can you explain when dealing with like-kind and quality? And we'll jump into that here real quick. But first, let me tell you quickly about my friends at AdjusterPro. How do you like this sponsoring thing? It's kind of different, isn't it? So AdjusterPro has, as far as I know, the most comprehensive adjuster licensing and continuing education services of anybody that I know. Let me make sure that I get their thing up here, because in fact, they've even got exclusive, this is important, pre-licensing training and exams for several states that no other pre-licensing outfit has. So there's like WebCE, and there's other companies that do adjuster licensing, but the AdjusterPro has worked out deals with, I think, Indiana and maybe Florida and a couple of other states where you can take AdjusterPro's training, take the exam through AdjusterPro, and then that counts for that state, right? For everybody else, you have to go to the state, like their website, and apply and all that stuff. But anyway, so they've worked out exclusive deals with several of these companies. So I like I said at the very beginning of this thing, I wanted to always work with partners in this way that are going to help you, and are going to be something that I use, or that I would use, right? So AdjusterPro is pretty affordable. They're competitive with their pricing. It's easy to use. They're comprehensive. You can any state license that you need, you can get through those guys. And I don't know really what else there is to say other than to go to AdjusterTV.com/AdjusterPro for more information about what they've got going on. All right, so like-kind quality. I think the question was specifically about, for roofs, Joel was asking, and non-matching states. So the thing with insurance is that you have to have you have to provide the insured, you have to get the insured back to their pre-loss condition, right? So, and most states, as far as I know, every state, Hold on a second. Max is trying to break in here.
Not Max. Thought this was going to be a ginger-free zone.
So, but while Max is getting his thing set up to jump in and give us a little bit of a report, we owe the insured uniform, reasonable appearance, right? So, in other words, the way matching works is, I want to try and organize my thoughts here in a way that this will be kind of a natural progression. The way matching works is this. If the item, whether it's roofing or siding or carpet or laminate flooring or any other kind of like material, like
Tile.
a finished tile, like any kind of finished material, if it's no longer made, right? If it's not, if the closest possible product is 3 shades off in color, or it's slightly off by an inch or 2, or it's a different texture or a different pattern, then it doesn't matter what the matching anything says, right? We are like if it's a front slope and you've got a concrete tile roof and that tile is no longer made and it can't be found anywhere, then you're buying that slope, right? Or you're working something out where you can harvest from a slope that nobody can see. Same thing on siding, right? If the siding doesn't match, then at all, like if you can't find that particular product, then you owe for uniform reasonable appearance that elevation. You get the closest thing you can. Where the matching thing and the non-matching and the matching state stuff comes in, hold on, Max is texting me. Where that comes in is like, well, let's take, for example, a state like Minnesota. We'll say in a non-matching state, I think, I can't think of a non-matching state. We'll just say a non-matching. Oh, there's Max. I'll tell you what, let's just jump in and let Max give us a report. Mr. Max, what's happening, man? Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Max, you need a haircut.
Oh, I lost him.
He'll be back.
So, this is the beauty of live TV
There you go.
right here. Uh-oh, there he is. All right, let's get
You
Max
saw
in
him?
here.
He was there. He wasn't there.
All right, brother,
There's
you're on.
Max.
Can you hear me?
He can't hear anything.
Ah, Max, can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can hear you.
What's happening, man? So you're down. Where are you at now?
Sorry if it's spotty. The service isn't great here. I'm in New Orleans right now.
Okay, no worries. Well, listen, why don't you go ahead and give us just a 2-minute overview of what you got going on down there.
Well, so it's an interesting story because I started off chasing the ice storm yesterday, the past few days, and I didn't really have any intention of chasing Zeta since it was going to be a lower end storm. We've already intercepted a lot of hurricanes this year, so I was going to pass this one up, but I went to bed yesterday and woke up this morning at about 4 a.m. and it had just exploded. It looked really impressive, and I literally got dressed and ran out the door within about 25 minutes from waking up to being in the car. Was 5 minutes. So hauled butt down here and made it just in time for the eye wall, which was making landfall in southern Louisiana near Grand Isle, and I couldn't get quite to that location in time, so I had to settle for a location just a little bit to the northeast of that. It's freezing up for me. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we still got you. Oh, we lost him. So, well,
Max, don't leave us.
Don't leave us, Max.
Come back, little buddy.
All right.
You've never partied till you partied with Max in Odessa, Texas.
Right.
I'm just saying.
There we go. All right. This computer thing is like, I need a producer in here, like pushing buttons and stuff, because I'm like jacking around with all this stuff. So, all right. Well, Max is, if he jumps back in, we'll jump. Well, there he is.
Maximilian.
Max. There he is.
Yeah, sorry guys. Even though it says I have good data here, the cell towers are obviously overwhelmed with people trying to, do whatever.
No worries, but
So
yeah, just give us the highlights just real quick, and then we'll let you get back to driving.
So road out north of Port Sulphur, Louisiana, 25 miles south of New Orleans. It was very intense, Category 2, borderline Category 3. We had winds over 100 miles per hour. We had a building. It was a bar and an associated outbuilding with it. They exploded, flew into the air. Have some really dramatic footage to share. The storm moved north into New Orleans. We've seen some damage here. It's not terrible. It definitely weakened as it came inland. So I've seen some occasional power flashes here in New Orleans. Lines down, limbs down, siding peeled off, shingles peeled off. Fences damaged, that type of stuff here in New Orleans. Further south, it was definitely more severe near Port Sulphur, where I was, Grand Isle. I forget what is just a Grand Cayman or something. No, that's not it. There's a Golden.
That was really far south.
Golden. That's what I meant. Golden Meadow, which is north of Grand Isle. That was damaged pretty severely, and now the storm is moving into Mississippi. And they're getting storm surge up by Slidell, Gulfport. They're going to have some, inland storm surge with, I believe, up to 5 to 8 feet of water right along the coast there coming in. So that's going to be an issue. But thankfully, this system is moving quite fast comparative to, Hurricane Sally, which sat around for a while. This thing's moving at like 25 miles per hour. So it's getting shot out of the area really quickly. So you're not going to have a ton of flooding. You're not going to have a ton of lingering effects. I mean, I was in the eye wall about 2 hours ago, and now there's like no wind at all. It's moved away that quickly. So a quick hitter, but definitely not good for a state that has received 3 landfalling hurricanes now this year, which has got to be a record. There's been 6 landfalling hurricanes in the United States, which is, I believe, is also a record. This is the second of the Greek alphabet storms, which is a record. Never before have we had a Greek alphabet named storm make landfall on the United States coast. And basically what that means is when they name the hurricanes, they go through the traditional alphabet first, most of the letters. And then when they run out of those names, they have to transition to the Greek alphabet. So we've gotten midway into the Greek alphabet, and it's currently tied with the number of systems that we had in the record-breaking 2005 season. So we have one more in recorded history.
Wow, incredible. So it's this storm has kind of hit areas that were already sort of like beat up then.
This one pretty much nailed right in between all the areas that haven't been hit, because you had Laura and you had Delta, which took very similar paths near and just east of Lake Charles, which is that's further west of where I'm at right now. I'm in New Orleans right now, and they hit just to the east here, more like Dolphin Island, Alabama, Gulf Shores, Alabama, places like that.
That was south.
And this area was kind of the area that hadn't been impacted, and now here we go. We have a storm that has greatly impacted this area, but thankfully New Orleans seems to be relatively okay. They're going to have some power out, down trees and stuff, and maybe some siding, shingle, sheet metal ripped off type thing. But overall, not too bad from what I'm seeing here. I'm not seeing a ton of damage. But further south is a different story.
I gotcha. Right on, man. Well, I tell you what, be safe, and thanks for the report.
Yeah, I'll have some video up here in a little bit. I'm going to get kind of out of the path here so I can get some better cell service, and then I'm going to sit down and put together a package for you guys so y'all can see some of that dramatic video of literally a building collapsing and then being ripped and thrown into the air. Probably one of the most dramatic shots I've gotten since the Laura intercept, where we watched the high-rise blow apart.
Wow, right on. All right, dude. Well, be safe, and we'll catch up with you later.
Thanks, good,
guys.
Max.
I'll see you in Denver on Monday, Matt.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, Sunday night.
All right, man. Later.
We'll see ya. All right. There you go, guys. There's a report from the
Super Max
coast.
Olson,
Yeah. So,
my little buddy, my little 6'17" buddy.
all right. Let me recombobulate my whole thing here. All right. So back to what I was saying. I'll just kind of wrap it up. In a non-matching state, if say for example, you have one elevation of siding that's damaged, and that siding is not available, and there's not a reasonable close match, then you're going to replace that whole siding, that whole elevation, right? So if you have a piece that's blown off, and if you try to stick a piece in there that didn't quite match, you're going to be able to see it from the road. Then, in a non-matching state, if you can't find like-kind quality or a reasonable match, then you are going to be paying for that whole elevation. In a matching state, and you're going to be paying for a whole elevation of siding that is not going to match the other three sides of the house, but should be close enough to where, from the street you wouldn't be able to tell a difference unless you got right up and looked at the corner and saw that this one didn't quite match or whatever, right? So it's going to be the closest possible match. So you're paying for that one elevation. The insurance company in a non-matching state only owes for that elevation if the siding is not, a reasonable match is not available. Make sense? In a matching state, like I was saying, Minnesota, if the siding is not available, then you're wrapping the house. You're paying for all four sides of siding. When I get sent on storms to Minnesota, to Minneapolis or St. Cloud or whatever, I was like, I'm like walking out the front door while I'm still on the phone with whoever's dispatching me, because it's going to be a good money storm. A claim and it would happen, like, I wouldn't say every claim, but most claims, especially if you get into a nice suburb, a typical $12,000 claim would quickly turn into a $45,000 claim. So you have $60,000, $100,000, $45,000 claims, and you're making some good bank. So Minnesota is very generous to the policyholder, to the insured. So that's what it means when we say a matching state, right? The caveat is, say even if you're in Minnesota, and whether you're in a matching state or not in the matching state, and again we'll use siding as an example because it's really the most common. Roofing is not as common, but for siding, say for example you have some vinyl siding, and there's 3 chips on a great big, there's like 700 square feet, or 7 squares of siding there, and you have 3 hail chips on it, right? You pull a siding sample and you send it off to ITEL, and it comes back as available. When you send something off to ITEL, they're going to tell you, it's hearthstone, heather gray, wood grain, it's a deep double 4-inch exposure, it's a this, it's a that, bevel siding, and this is the exact match. This is what the siding is. And not only that, it's available. Not only that, it's at ABC Supply, which was 30 miles away from the insured's house, right? So they're going to tell you where it is. It may be that siding is no longer made, but that ABC Supply has, 50 squares of it hiding in the back of their warehouse, right? So they're going to call every supplier in the area and say, hey, do you have any of this Hearthstone, Alcoa, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we got some old stuff back there. They're not making it anymore. Doesn't matter if it's still available, even if it's still available in some warehouse, right? You're paying for a repair on that side of the house, depending on what the estimating guidelines are, right? Even if that is a north-facing, we'll say a south-facing elevation, and it's really faded, right? So then you're going to be, you can't, even in matching states, you can't make any concessions for color matching due to fading and weathering, because those fading and weathering are not covered by the policy. This ends up being a gray area a lot of the time, and there are things that you can do to make this work. And a lot of times the carrier may have a really low threshold for totaling an elevation of siding, depending on how many holes it has in it or whatever, so they avoid getting into a big fight with the contractor and the insured, because they hold the siding up to the side of the house and it doesn't match, right? And they say, well, my siding doesn't match. the logical comeback is well, if you pulled a piece of siding off the front side of the house, then we'll say the north side of the house, which doesn't get really any sun, especially up there in like the northern states, and you take it around and you hold it up on the back side of the south facing side, it still doesn't match, right? It's going to be a lot darker because it's not faded. So that's kind of matching. I wouldn't say that's a nutshell, but Max kind of threw my thought process off. So does that answer your question, Joel? Hopefully that was information that you guys can use, or at least kind of give you sort of an idea sort of how the matching things. It's not that big of a deal, and if a matching issue comes up, I'm usually happy about it because, like I said, especially in a state like Minnesota, it can result in a much, much higher fee bill for me as an independent adjuster. And if I'm in a matching state, I'm probably going to take a siding sample on every siding claim that I have, right? Off the damaged side
So I
of the
had a
house.
situation.
Yeah.
So I had a situation with tile in a house. This tile was installed in, I think it was the mid '80s. This house was a mansion. It was. I mean, the area that was affected was actually called the ballroom. Okay, and there was just maybe 6 tiles that were damaged, but this stuff was older tile. Just so happens the man who installed the tile was still in business, and we were trying to work with the contractor. He said it wasn't available. We couldn't find it. We sent it to ITEL. ITEL comes up with some matches for it. I knew going into it that we were going to have a difficult time finding a match for it. Plus that there was some feature striping in it and all this other stuff. And so I went ahead and made the decision early on, when I first looked at it, to just replace the entire room. Well, they come back, so they found a match. Well, it really wasn't a match for it. And the homeowner was upset because that ballroom actually had a foyer that led into it, but there was doors that closed leading into that foyer. Mm-hmm. Well, the carrier's saying, well, there's a threshold. We're only going to stop at that threshold. Well, the homeowner's saying, well, but those doors never close and you're going to be able to see the difference in the tile. The carrier doesn't care. We're fixing the floor. We're going to make it look like as close as it was before. We already paid for the entire room versus just 6 pieces of tile. That's all we're paying for. And when I left, they were still arguing that. The homeowner wasn't happy, but I think I heard later on, because I became friends with the inside adjuster, she said that they just told him, this is all you're getting, and go away. And so I don't know what happened, but that's what you deal with out there. People want their stuff to match no matter how old it is, and you're not always going to be able to accommodate it. And I actually got my hand slapped because I paid for the entire room, but it's not what you pay, it's what you say.
Right. You want to err, like you said, you want to err on the side of the insured. Tie goes to the insured is what the old State Farm saying I got. So let's see. Bob has a question here. Typical pay per claim for file review. That is an awesome question, and I'm going to answer that after I hit this last little sponsor I've got. So I want you guys to know I've just kind of got this locked in this morning, but I have a new industry partner with AdjusterTV, and it's an insurance agent named Allison Alcott. I don't know if you guys are on LinkedIn, you may have seen her. She sells private health insurance to independent adjusters, as well as independent contractors, gig workers, anybody who's not on like a group plan with your job gives you health insurance, right? She can help you out with a private plan, or can help you, show you what your options are on the marketplace and all that kind of stuff. So you can get a totally free, totally confidential consultation with her if you go to this website on the screen, AdjusterTV.com/health. There's a little form on there that has a few questions on it. It goes straight to her email. It doesn't go to a bunch of telemarketers or a bunch of other agents, and you're not going to get a bunch of spam calls or whatever. And again, she's the only person that can see whatever you put in there. So I did an interview with her this morning, and that video is going to be coming out here in the next couple of days. So if you're not watching this live, it's not available right now while we're going live, but if you're watching this later, you can find that at AdjusterTV.com. Again, you can get Allie started on a quote for you at AdjusterTV.com/health. So let's talk about pay a little bit, James. So specifically, Bob's question is about file review, but we can kind of hit on, I think we can hit on kind of the different ways that adjusters get paid for this sort of thing, or for claims in general. But if you are, first of all, I'll kind of explain what a file reviewer is and what a file reviewer is not. A file reviewer is, for our purposes, an adjuster or like an office person or a person who's sitting at home in their pajamas, who is reviewing files for the IA firm before the IA firm sends the files to the carrier. Okay, so they're kind of a gatekeeper between you turn your file in. It's not just going to go straight to the carrier and get paid. It's going to hit the file reviewer, and they're going to make sure that you did everything the way your IA firm wants it done, because they want to be able to have a certain level of quality, right? And they're going to send files back to you for corrections, whatever it is, formatting, typos, not putting a sketch in when you're supposed to, missing photos like a risk photo, having the wrong notes in, having no notes in when you need whatever it is, right? Your invoice is wrong, that's what a file reviewer is going to do on the IA side. Once the file reviewer approves your file, then it's going to go, it'll get sent to the carrier, and the carrier will probably do, depending on how new you are, or they keep track. I mean, they know who you are, right? So they're going to keep track of the people that are bringing claims into them. So if they know that you're brand new, they're going to QA your claims when they come in. So they're going to do their own file review, and you may get the file kicked back again from the carrier QA saying, we know this is approved. Probably what will happen is they'll send it back to the file reviewer, and then the file reviewer will call you on something and say, hey, listen, I approved this file, but the QA called me and they said that, we need to do this different on the next one. So going forward, do it different on your claims, whatever, right? So typically, when I've worked as a file reviewer, I've either gotten a day rate or been paid by the claim. On Hurricane Irma, I did file review and I got paid by the claim, and it was $30 a claim, and I was doing 50, 60, 70 claims a day. So it was outstanding money. And it was for several weeks, and then until they changed everything, right? So that's like we were talking about earlier with James. I mean, they just changed everything. No longer are we doing that. You can only do 20. You can only file review 20 a day, or you have to fill out they change everything up all the time. On the day rate side, this was, you could either review, you had the choice of doing like what they call a half day or a full day. Half day was, what was it? 125, and then the full day was 250, right? And again, I mean, you're just home. You just have a list. You just like, you got, Jerry Springer on in the background, and you're eating donuts or whatever, and you're just scrolling through and, making correction, making a list of corrections that need to go to the claim, sending the file back to the insured, or approving this one. And usually, when you got fast at it, you could be done, 40 claims, I mean, you could be done by lunchtime, right? Especially if you started early. Usually you would have for your 40 claims to review in your queue by 6 o'clock in the morning, right? That's when my guy sent me my claims to review, and I would have those done easily before lunch, especially if you have a bunch of good adjusters. And this is why I keep talking to you guys. I'm always saying this, you have a good file, take the right amount of photos, tell the story, make sure that your photos match what you're doing in the estimate and in your explanation, in your activity diary, your GLR, your narrative. That is when I see your name and you do those things right. When I see your name show up, 4 of my 40 claims or 12 of my 40 claims have your name on them, and I know you do good work, I know that I'm going to be able to zip those through really fast, right? I'm going to be checking for things like, typos maybe, but I'm not going to be looking for major things like major estimating guidelines, or like you didn't have the photos or you didn't have this. I still have to check all that stuff, but because I know that you do good work, those are fast, right? So file review is a pretty good gig. You have to kind of be like, an adjuster who has some experience. Generally speaking, they're not going to give file review gigs to just brand spanking new people, because you have to be able to, you have to understand the policy, because if the adjuster pays for something he shouldn't have, or is not paying for something he should, you have to be able to spot that as a file reviewer. And then you have to be able to look at their construction estimates and say, all right, well, this is right. He shouldn't be putting masking there. send it back, right, to take out the masking or whatever it is, right? So you have to have some experience. You're not gonna be able to just, that's not like a career path that you can just choose. I want to do file review. You have to be an adjuster first. So I don't know, what State Farm's, we don't have to go into specifics about it or whatever, but how they paid you guys. So you were telling me, James, that you you showed up and they paid you a little bit of day rate, right? And then you were, how did that, did they put you on an hourly? I heard some different things about.
I did this one. Yeah. So I did this one on hourly. I mean, I could have gone component, but since it was my first jump into this, I just chose to go the hourly route just in case I fell on my face. At least I'd make some money. And it was, so they paid you work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you got big overtime, and the money wasn't bad. I mean, I'm not going to complain about it. I mean, I'd made better money this year, but it was still, I mean, $15,500 in a month is not anything to sneeze at. Had I been on component, I could have made better, but that's the way they paid you, and it was just that, and they wanted of course they want to see production with that money that they're paying you too. So that's where it really gets. I mean, if they're paying you by the hour, they want to see closed claims. If you're getting component, they still want to see closed claims, but they're probably not going to be, as pushing you as hard as they're pushing the hourly people. At least I talked to a guy matter of fact, I was talking to a guy named Randy today, and he was on component, and he's finally out of there. But they weren't pressuring him the way that they were pressuring other people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean,
as far as, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I think ultimately a person adjuster wants to end up on component. I mean, because it incentivizes efficiency, which is one of the biggest things that made me really love the job, is because I found that the more efficient I was, the more claims I could close, the more money I could make on a particular cat, because they give claims to the people who are producing, right? Who are the production that we're talking about, the volume, who close good quality claims. And then, because they know your work, they want to keep you busy so that you don't run off to some other IA firm or whatever. So that's component. I think if they can't get rid of it, I think they would, if they got rid of it altogether, it would be to their detriment, I think.
Right. To circle back a minute, we were talking earlier about, coming in with low expectations and that way you're not disappointed. But one of the things that you'll get very frustrated with, and I got frustrated with it, and I spoke to other people that were frustrated, is that, I came into this thing and I had State Farm experience on the agency side. I knew the policy. I'd been doing some of this work before. I know how to scope a house. I know how to use Xactimate, but again, I'm still trying to learn that carrier system. And so that's what was dragging me down. And because all I needed was just a little bit of help to get past that hump. But yet you have these trainers and these managers that are busy helping so many other people. And one of the things, I was honestly, I was 2 weeks in and I was ready to leave. I was just like, I can't get caught up. I was extremely frustrated because I just couldn't get help that I needed. And one of the things that was said to me, I was really ready to walk, and I had about 5 managers standing around me talking me off the ledge. And they were saying, look, the problem is that we have a lot of lower skilled people that really don't have the aptitude for this, but they're here, but we have to deal with it. And we're having to get those people through and spend time with them. And we don't have enough time to spend with the people that have the talent and the people that will be good and productive at this job. And that's how they lose good people. So that's when I learned very quickly that I had to be patient with the process. I knew I could do the job. There was other people there that I met that were in the same boat I was in. They were good at what they were doing. They were smart, intelligent people, but they were being kind of shoved to the side so that management could deal with people that trust me, when you go to these things, and I'm not trying to talk down or anything like that, but you'll go to these things and there are people that are walking through there and you're going, how is that person even here? I have bad knees, but there was literally people there that were barely able to walk, and they were there to do there to do property claims, and you're like, how did this person even get in the door?
Right.
So and they've got to spend time with those people because they've got to get everything done. They brought them there, they're paying them, they've got to figure out a way to make it work. And so it was a shock. It was a big shock.
It's a trip, and I kind of pushed against it for a long time because when I went, my very first hurricane was Hurricane Ivan back in 2004, and I'd already been an adjuster for several years. So the hurricane was easy. It's just a bunch of wind claims for me. So I was kind of like, I walked into the pilot induction center. They rented out like a church with a huge gym and everything, and it was just a whirlwind. I mean, it was just like you said. I mean, there's people walking in, like just straight off the street who didn't know anything about anything. You know, they were delivering pizza the day before, or selling shoes, or you know, they were golf pro or whatever it was, and they had to like sink or swim. And there wasn't a whole. I mean, they had little classes and stuff, but there wasn't a whole lot of. They just didn't have. They didn't have the resource, and they still don't to this day. It sounds like they don't have the resources to hold everybody's hand the whole time. They're gonna try to pour resources into people that they know will survive, and it's like triage, right? They're gonna let the rest of them kind of fall away.
So I will never forget my first day. I'm sitting there and I hear this person say, and he was an older gentleman, and he said, "I just got my first iPhone 3 months ago. They expect me to learn this system in 2 days."
Right.
And I'm not kidding you, man. And I heard that, and I almost hit the floor the second I heard it. And then you had, you know, other people that were, you know, you would still hear that. I mean, even several weeks in, you would still hear conversations like that where people would say, you know, they're expecting me to do this. They're expecting me to do this. And it's like, you know, I don't, how they expect us to learn all this? Well, that's what you signed up for. You know,
yeah, exactly.
It's an experience, man.
It's a trip. Yeah, and you guys be walking in.
And ECS, I see somebody talk about ECS. That stands for the extra click system.
Right.
That's what it stands for.
Man, I never got into.
You do the
ECS.
same thing 5 times. You're lucky.
So Riley has a quick question here, and then I think we'll probably wrap it up after this. And then I'll have a question for you guys after we kind of tackle this one. But Riley asks, can you recommend reputable Xactimate training companies? I'm new and just getting started in adjusting. There are a lot of ways that you can go about getting trained for Xactimate, right? Somebody said Stephen Harmon. He is great, right? He's kind of has a little bit of a broader sort of way that he teaches. So it's, you know, it's not straight up just like Xactimate for adjusters. It's like Xactimate for construction, you know, restoration contractors. It's Xactimate for public adjusters. So his training is kind of like includes a lot of that stuff in it. AdjusterPro has I think it's a 2 or 3 day, 4 hours a day, kind of getting started. It's kind of like a jumpstart course. It's $250. I have, which some of you guys have probably seen, and a free training that I put together, which is basically walking you through sort of like start to finish, how to set up Xactimate, how I'm going to run claims through Xactimate photos. It's a 5-part video series, and again, it's totally free. And you can go to AdjusterTV.com/Xactimate to get into that. It's not gonna be, you're not gonna be able to pass level 2 certification with it. You might be able to pass level 1, but I don't teach this particular training. I don't teach to any kind of a certification. I'm actually working with. It's going to be a surprise, but I'm working with somebody that's hugely popular on YouTube, and this is probably a totally give it away, who does Xactimate training to build out some level 1 and level 2 certification training, and like the testing part as well for you guys, so that it's going to be, we're going to kind of partner up on that. And that's going to be coming out in the next month or so, hopefully. So very excited about that. I know I get this question all the time. If people are always asking about Xactimate, the biggest thing I could tell you guys is to try to get some Xactimate training somewhere, and then practice, right? Practice.
practice.
Because listen, they can show you, your mic's doing a thing. So they can show you, you know, how to import photos, how to open the activity diary, how to do this, how to do that, how to draw a spiral staircase in Sketch. But this is like when I went to Vail National or Vail Training Solutions back in May of '99, and didn't go on my first showroom until May of 2000. That's a year, and I didn't practice. I wasn't paying for the subscription, you know, for 12 months. I showed up and cracked open my laptop and was like, oh, Xactimate, right? So, and I didn't have any muscle memory in there about just moving through. You know, there's a workflow going through Xactimate. And it's, again, it's something I teach. AdjusterTV.com/Xactimate. I show my workflow. This is how an adjuster uses Xactimate. So, if nothing else, that would be like a good start, so you can just kind of see the process and kind of get like the overview, and then practice as much as possible. And the way you practice, don't spend 2 or 3, 4 hours, you know, trying to build a Disney princess castle, right? Because that's what you know, if you want to do Xactimate level 3, you have to do something like that. You're never going to do that. You're never going to need to do that ever, right? When you're in the field, what you need to do is take 20 minutes. 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, however much time you can kind of peel off to do that, and walk around and look around the room you're in and say, all right, I'm going to pretend like there's a water spot right there in the ceiling. I'm going to take my camera, get a photo of it, measure the room off, you know, take a couple more photos or whatever, so I have something more than one photo. Maybe go out front in the front yard, take a picture of the front of the house, and I'm going to import that into Xactimate. I'm going to write a little activity diary saying inspected loss, blah, 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 and then write a 3 or 4 line estimate, and then I'm out. 20 minutes, right? And do that a few times a week. And going through the process of just doing like importing the photos, you know, getting the measurements, maybe building a sketch or using the dimension tool, and then finding stuff in the line items, because you're going to spend, like James can attest to this, you're going to spend hours. If you don't know where stuff is in the line items, it'll 10x the amount of time that you spend on claims if you don't know how to use the search function and how to find common things. You'll start to memorize these category codes and the line item stuff to where you can like write the stuff in your sleep, and then you build some macros and you don't have to remember them, right? So practice more than anything, because you don't know when you're going to get deployed.
Well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's well worth the money to sign up for Adjuster TV Plus and take Matt's course. And the
But you don't even have to do that to take the
course.
course. You can just go to, like I said, all you got to do is opt in at AdjusterTV.com/Xactimate, and then it'll lead you into Adjuster TV Plus to see if you're interested in getting into that. But it's free. You don't have to pay for anything on it. But Adjuster TV Plus, I mean, if you want to do that,
it's free.
yeah,
But I paid for it. So
No, you didn't.
why did I have to pay for it?
You didn't pay for it, did you?
I'll
give you your money back.
Well, yeah, I had to sign up for Adjuster TV Plus so I could get to the course, so I could get the free goodies at the end of it.
Well, yeah.
So
But yeah, so there's a bunch of macros. In order to get the macros, you have to sign up for a 7-day free trial.
Yeah.
But all you have to do is go into your dashboard, billing, and then cancel. So if you don't want to do it, and so it's not, nothing's going to get charged. So it's still free. So it's free.
But get those macros and get the freebies that he has at the end of it, and just playing around with those macros, and you'll see a lot of different things that, I mean, if you go in and you build it yourself and then go in and build it with one of the macros, you'll see that there's things that you probably missed. And I learned that I was doing some things not exactly right, because now, and some of those macros are stuff that you're not going to use too, and you have to delete those out, but it will cause you to think about, okay, well, yeah, I should have done this and I didn't do that. So the macros, you can learn a lot from the macros that he has and the extra goodies that he has in the back of it. So it's well worth it.
Yeah.
Think
So in
about
other
it.
words, in exchange for, signing up for a free trial, you get the 56 macros. There's several estimate templates in there. There's a bunch of, I go into like contact scripts, activity diary scripts, and all that kind of stuff in there as well. So it's not just like, step 2, click here to open this thing. It's like, this is the whole workflow, and this is how Xactimate fits into that. So I spent a lot of time on it, and I don't know why I'm giving it away for free. It makes it sound like it's not worth much, but I mean,
You with me, I'll charge people for it. I can make a couple
it's
bucks.
me running through
can
Xactimate
do it.
and showing everything, every part of the process, GLR, I mean, the whole 9 yards. So check it out anyway. I mean, it's, like I said, it's free. I don't know how many times I have to say it's free. Okay, so, yeah, so Billy Jack, he liked the macros. I got a chop and drop. I got a tree macro in there. You know, it's everything that I got. It's, you know, so I think, you know, we could probably go on all night. But I would like to wrap this up. And
Let's
so
do
my
it.
final,
I've got nothing else to do.
yeah. So, well, I do.
My
I mean,
wife's gone
it's-
for another 45 minutes. I got time.
I'm still at the studio. Oh, by the way, I have a new studio.
Look at his studio,
know,
everybody.
I mean,
Look at this.
It's a
It's
brick
on
wall.
big
back
market,
there.
big time here.
Yeah, man. So my question for you guys is, and you can give us a thumbs up or any comments or whatever. This is kind of a pilot of something that me and James have been talking about doing on a weekly basis. And I wanted to see if you guys like this format, if you kind of like us just sort of like, you know, talking about a few things and then answering questions. And it's kind of a live format. What do you guys think? Yes, no, hate it, love it?
Keep doing it with just Matt and get rid of James, or just James and get rid of
Just
Matt.
James. Maybe just go with
You know,
James.
Yeah, so we can do that.
So Riley,
We
likes
got a
it.
yes from Riley. We got one yes. It's worth it.
All right, we're doing it.
So,
Thanks, Riley.
or he's the only person still watching. Everybody else just turned it on and walked away. It made us feel good that they were watching.
Yeah.
So, we got,
All right. So
we
now
got,
the yeses are starting to
mod
come
viewers.
in.
There's the yeses.
Cool.
So, guys, my background is more, you know, some of you know who I am, some don't. But I started off on the property side. I met Matt, and this is how things got started. And then got an injury and ended up on the auto side. And I had a fantastic year this year in auto since I jumped into auto, and I did things that most people won't do, and it was rewarded for it, and had a great year. But you know, I still wanted to do property, and that's why I ended up going down to Southern Louisiana. What am I going to do next year? I don't know. I mean, I know that I'm going to continue to do auto when given the opportunity. I'm doing a whole lot more semi trucks and trailers these days, but I still want to do more property. And so I've actually signed up for a couple of companies, and I'm at home right now, and I'm doing dailies, and I'm doing property dailies, and I'm doing auto and specialty heavy equipment dailies. So, you know, hang around. I mean, we'll tell you how to do all this stuff, and I'll tell you how I'm doing it and where I'm finding the work and how I got trained to do everything. And, you know, don't be one dimensional, because I mean, I'm in a heavy market like Dallas Fort Worth. This is the mecca of adjusters, but yet I'm finding work in this market, and I'm relatively new to the business, and I'm competing with everybody else out here, and I'm making a living. So
Yeah.
I'll love to share all that with you guys if you want to hang around for it.
Do you want to share what you made in the last 12 months? As an
I
adjuster?
just as an adjuster, I made a very nice 6-figure income in my first full year as an adjuster. And
I know it wasn't even all
and
property. It was like mostly auto, right?
No, it was mostly auto, and the bulk of that came from April through September, before the first of October. That's where the bulk of the matter of fact, if you just take those months by themselves, those were over 6 figures. So I worked hard. I spent a lot of time away from home, and it was definitely worth it to get the experience. Do I want to work that hard next year? No, I don't, because I'm old and lazy and fat. And no, I've got plans, and I hope they work out the way that I want to. But it was fun, and I had a blast doing it. I mean, this past year I went to Shreveport, College Station, Odessa, Texas, Champaign, Illinois, Minneapolis, worked all over Iowa for the derecho, and then ended up in Southern Louisiana. And a lot of time on the road, a lot of time away from home, but I did get some time at home too. So it was fun time.
Yeah.
So
Right on.
I need to get to the Dallas area. I've been working in Illinois for the past 6 months. So, well, you're from the Dallas area. So guys, if y'all want to reach me, okay,
Yeah.
it's easy to find me. So I do have a YouTube channel, which I haven't posted much in the last few months because I've been busy and traveling, which is Claims Junkie on YouTube. But if you want to just reach me, you can reach me at I'll give you the easy email. It's JH Mathis, like John Henry, JHMATHIS @me.com. That'll get to me. That's where everybody goes to first, and I filter the mail from there. But if you want to reach me, reach out to me there, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you and give you any advice I can give you. And
Right on, right on.
I can tell you I can tell you some stories about Matt that you can't tell me yet.
Speaking of which, speaking of good stories, so I don't know if it's official or not, but I think by the end of tomorrow anyway, it will be. NACA, as far as I know, like yesterday, NACA is going to be in Orlando, Florida. Okay, so I'm going to be there. James is going to be there, right? James will be
I'll
there.
be there.
Max is going to be there.
I forgot to say my wife is coming too, by the way.
My wife might come too. We'll just have to see. There's a lazy river, so she can't resist
Just
that.
killed the party.
So Chris Stanley might be there as well. So we're gonna try and get him to, because he's not too far away from there right
He
now.
doesn't have an excuse not to come if it's in Florida.
Exactly.
He has
exactly.
to.
We'll see if we can get him there. So anyway, so that's just a little piece of news for you guys. But again, so this is a pilot, so to speak, of sort of a new format that we want to try and do every week. We're not going to start doing it regularly until after Thanksgiving. So November is going to be just kind of regular programming stuff that we've got. I'm going to be out of pocket a little bit. I won't be in internet range for about probably 2.5 weeks after the first of the month. But for Thanksgiving, I'll probably be sitting there in front of the TV, eating turkey and gravy with my phone or my laptop or whatever, so I'll be able to kind of answer questions and stuff.
Gravy.
Yeah, man. So anyway, well, it's great having you guys, James. This was pretty fun, and I really, really appreciate everybody for being here, and I thank our sponsors for making this kind of happen, I guess. But we'll go ahead and leave it at that, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side.
Email me any topics you want us to talk about.
Yeah, and if you got questions or topics you want to have covered, like in the beginning when we first get going, send them over, right? So, all right, guys, well, we'll catch you later.
See you guys. Thanks for coming.